Everybody, I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weed from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are the duo known as Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a game that, a lot of people going into this one were extremely pessimistic. I was hearing, people thought the Winnipeg Jets were going to get blown out of the water 7-1 or whatever it was. A lot of people thought was going to happen there, and that didn't happen. Pretty tight hockey game basically throughout. To a degree on the scoreboard. We can break down what happened on the ice, which maybe was not as much of a close game. But I mean, you take a look at the shots and, possession, some of those kind of things. I don't know that the Colorado Avalanche ever looked like they were in danger, but the Winnipeg Jets did a good job of keeping that one close. And that's good for you if you're okay with moral victories. If you like the real kind of victories that put points up on the board, you're not happy with this one walking away from it. Let's get into let's hop into a Toyota here from Jim Pattison Toyota on a Regent and go for a drive, the opening drive, in fact, and just kind of talk about the whole thing. I'll do another one of these things where we'll kind of like break down the game very specifically when Ken comes in here, and I'll just kind of tackle a point that we were making for a while before this happened. And I'm going to go there. A lot of folks, upset during the Comrie era of the Winnipeg Jets, and I'd get a lot of really angry texts, and we get a lot of angry messages here in the chat room about Eric Comrie. And my guy Tico was always texting me and letting me know how his displeasure with it. And what we landed on in the end with Eric Comrie is what Ken and I seem to see. I think Ken and I saw the same thing on this. I'll let him speak for himself. But what we seem to see on this thing over and over again was a goaltender that was doing a fairly decent job for the Winnipeg Jets that was just not getting, the support that he needed from the team around him. Some of the worst games that the Winnipeg Jets played when he was in net. Now, a lot of you will make that connection and felt vindicated by the very first game that he came back, and the fact that the Winnipeg Jets had what seemed to be their best game of the year, that one against the Washington Capitals, and Connor Hellebuyck didn't need to be good in that game, and so he ends up walking away with the victory. And while he didn't need to be good in that game, it was his mental fortitude and stamina and the confidence that he brought to the Winnipeg Jets that, had them scoring 5 goals and, doing all the kind of stuff that they did. And that it's great. Those kind of things, it's one of those, you can't prove it right, you can't prove it wrong kind of arguments, right? Well, that they won that game because of the boost from Connor Hellebuyck and all those things. What I would suggest, though, and 12-game stretch for Eric Comrie, one of those games Milic was in. So I don't know what the points percentage would be while he was in net. But if you take, it was a 22 possible points. Let me just do this quickly here, folks. And he got 7 in the time. The team got 7. So 7 divided by 22 equals, okay, so we've got basically 0.32% points percentage the Winnipeg Jets had under Eric Comrie and his tenure. Under Connor Hellebuyck, it's 0.37. Not a massive wide chasm. Now you're going to sit there and you're going to tell me, well, it's a small sample size, and it is a small sample size. You're right to point that out. The same as Eric Comrie's 11 games is a small sample size, right? But a lot of you pointed to the numbers that were being put up by Eric Comrie in games where he was getting hung out to dry by his team. And again, Ken and I would say, well, when you're allowing, wide open rushes and backdoor tap-ins and, cross ice one-timers, the degree of difficulty gets up. We didn't necessarily see a lot of shots that Connor Hellebuyck would have been saving that Eric Comrie wasn't saving. But in the end, we acquiesced and we said, like, in the end, his numbers have to be better. He's got to put up better numbers than that. And in the end, you're looking for results. You got to get results. Well, this, I think, is a perfect example for those of you who were just, like Tico and spending your time, rage dancing in an empty factory, like he was, trying out as an extra in the movie Footloose. You know what I mean? I'm hoping that maybe all you folks who were out there doing that kind of stuff can see that that was maybe a little bit of wasted energy, because for all the times that you looked and said, well, it doesn't matter, he needs to get the job done, you take a look at Connor Hellebuck in this game, and the numbers will tell you that if we want to land on what we landed on before, the numbers will tell you that Connor Hellebuck was not good enough in this game. That's what the numbers would tell you. Well, I would tell you from watching that game that I think Connor Hellebuck was the best Winnipeg Jets player in that game. I thought it was obvious that he was the best Winnipeg Jets player in that game. But if you're just going to look from afar, which a lot of analysts do when they break this kind of stuff down, you're going to look and you're going to see that Connor Hellebuck was sub 890 on this night. And and someone is going to say, well, Connor Hellebuck wasn't good enough. The numbers tell us that he wasn't good enough. The whole point of this kind of diatribe that I'm going on in the Jim Pattison Toyota on Region opening drive is just the idea that while many of you seem borderline offended that we defended Eric Comrie's play, and defended it, I only say in that what I was seeing, I was telling you, and what I was telling you, you thought was in defense of the player. I'm just telling you what I see. If it sounds like I'm defending him because what I see is in defense of him, well, there you go. That's how it goes. But you could be saying the same thing about Connor Hellebuck. The massive jump in statistics that you were expecting to see hasn't really materialized. Is it higher? No doubt it's higher. But I would also argue that the Winnipeg Jets are playing better hockey right now than they were back when they lost that game to the Buffalo Sabres and were playing some real, stanky hockey, the game against the Edmonton Oilers. But regardless, the whole point of the conversations that we had with when Eric Comrie was in net was repeatedly over and over again. It's a cop-out for you to say that it's the goalie. And it would be a cop-out right now if you said about Connor Hellebuck. You won't. People won't, because he's Connor Hellebuck, and people don't trash Connor Hellebuck, but it's easy to trash Eric Comrie. He's an easy target. But the fact of the matter is, this has not been a magic bullet solution, Connor Hellebuck coming back. It's the Winnipeg Jets walking in. Connor Hellebuck can't win games 1-0 when his team's not the one scoring the one. That's how they lose their last game. All his shots tonight, or all the goals on him tonight, one's just a really great placed shot by Martin Necas. Another one is a redirection off a skate. Another one is a tip that he can't see. This is a tough night for Connor Hellebuck because he's getting goals scored on him that he doesn't have a lot of chances on. Sound familiar? Sound familiar to some of the things we've been talking about before? Anyways, the issues that exist with the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll get into them with Ken. I'll just go over very quickly in this one. Maybe the most evergreen take I have ever delivered on this show was before this season, when I told you the Winnipeg Jets would have a hard time coming back in games. I would suggest it goes beyond the entire Nikolai Ehlers thing. I talked about how what I'm seeing from the Winnipeg Jets is a team that can come together for parts of the game and be, a good reflection of what they were last year, but they can't sustain it. They can only do it for a certain amount of time. I think one of the things we see when the Winnipeg Jets are trying to get back into the game is to stay in the game. They are spending what energy they do have to try and stay in the game. And by the time the third period comes down, there's not enough left. But I don't think anyone is seeing any differently than what I'm seeing when the Winnipeg Jets are trying to close a lead in a game, in that the last 10 minutes of these games that they are chasing and down by one, they are not even close. Remember, I talked about the feeling of inevitability that you used to get from the Winnipeg Jets? The inevitability is that the Winnipeg Jets are just going to, have a futile final 10 minutes and walk off the ice with the loss. This was another one of those here tonight. Ken and I are going to break it down a little bit more here, but I guess, it's only 4 games, small sample size. You got a, less difficult opponent. Or you would think the St. Louis Blues were supposed to be that. It didn't turn out too well. But you've got a chance to go after a team that you're chasing in the standings here. One of the teams you've allowed past you in the Utah Mammoth. So maybe the Jets have a better chance there. Again, small sample size. But I think, given the 11-game run that we saw from Eric Comrie, where so many people tried to put all of the Jets' woes on their backup goaltender, and so many analysts from outside the market tried to tell you, well, that's what happens when you don't have your Hart Trophy goaltender. Well, they've got him now. And things really don't look markedly different. That's my take here anyways, on the opening drive here, the Jim Pattison Toyota opening drive. And this December, it's time to Toyota at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Lease the 2025 Tacoma 4x4 SR5 truck from just $116 weekly for 64 months at 6.59% with $7,699 down and a $1,500 accessory credit. But hurry, the offer ends December 31st. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive today. All right, time to bring in the man with the best music in the business, folks. Here comes Kenny. Neither of us rocking the Vittorio Rossi gear. I actually have mine lying right here on the ironing table, getting ready to go.
What color tomorrow, buddy? What color?
Oh, well, you know what? I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to give you it. It is a pinstripe gray. Okay. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Window pane gray when you've got like the cross patterns going with gray. And I don't know yet whether I'm going to go with the deep purple tie or the gray pink stripe tie. Both are good numbers. Hey, you know what? Frankie and the boys assured me either is going to work. It's kind of up to me. They make it paint by numbers for dum-dums like me. And that's, you're going to see on air tomorrow that even a dum-dum can look like $1 million as long as they do one crucial thing. And that's head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corridon Avenue. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent them. Ask for Frankie and the boys. And of course, they will be done up right. Ken, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, interesting game, Sean. I mean, if the Jets hadn't dug themselves so deep a hole, as you talked about, I mean, this isn't about moral victories or whatever, but I mean, we can't ignore the fact that the Jets, I mean, they played a lot better than Wednesday night in St. Louis, and you were at the game there. It was pretty listless in a lot of the areas, but again, for a team that's below the playoff line, there's no points for competing, and you're just left with the, woulda, coulda, shoulda situation again. I mean, if the Jets had offered an effort like this one, they might not have been 0-1 to start the road trip instead of being now 0-2. So yeah, I mean, they battled hard after falling behind 2-0. They were definitely on their heels out of the gate. We've seen this movie before, Sean. 2022, we had a front row seat for a good chunk of it when we talked about the Avalanche, how they play at warp speed, and everybody else sort of is trying to keep up. And the team trying to keep up in that Stanley Cup final was the two-time defending champion Tampa Bay Lightning, and they found a way to make it a series. But ultimately, the depth of the Avalanche, and the brilliant play of McKinnon and Makar and company was too much. And that's sort of what we saw in this one. I mean, Nathan McKinnon, great first period, great feed to find Natchez late, as you talked about. Jets, get caught in transition, bar down shot. But, then, I feel like Nate wasn't pushed after that, really. I mean, yes, that means the Jets did a good job defensively, but both McKinnon and Makar, I mean, we'll get into Makar in a second. I mean, we both agree that the shorthanded goal, great effort by Barron, but if let's just put it this way, if that were Josh Morrissey as the chaser, the chat room would be going berserk because he was coasting. Makar's one of the best players in the NHL, and that's not even close. But he was coasting at a situation where the Avalanche were comfortably in the lead at 2-0 and had a power play in the last, 30 seconds of a period, and kind of got caught flat-footed. And I didn't particularly love the effort, and I don't think Jared Bednar would have either. I mean, that's not going to be one that you enjoy watching in the video room, and those guys hold themselves to a high standard. So my point being that, the Jets showed some good things, but Sean, in a game where you get a shorthanded goal and you win the special teams battle 2-0, that's a game you can't afford to lose, because the Jets played, it was not a near perfect game, no. But if you're in a 1-goal game with the Avalanche and you have the special teams, advantage, you got to find a way to get a 5-on-5 goal, or you got to find a way to defend better. So to me, it's interesting. Like, so the Jets are obviously going to take some pieces of that game and try to build on them going into Utah. But I mean, Scott O'Neill said it. I mean, they can't, they can't be reliant on, playing better. That's not the standard that they established here, Sean. And we know it's not last year, but good teams, the standard is not playing okay. I mean, this wasn't the Jets getting goalied by Scott Wedgwood. Scott Wedgwood, wasn't overly tested outside of the 2 goals, Sean.
Yeah. Kyle Connor wraparound is about the only thing I could think of.
There were not a ton of glorious chances. I mean, one of the best looks was behind the back pass, Nino Niederreiter to Gustav Nyquist, but it was from a bad angle. So, and he shot it off the side of the net. I mean, it was a tough spot, but yeah, I mean, Kyle Connor's wraparound is a good chance, but there weren't enough good chances. And Sean, that's, the Jets have to take some responsibility, but that's because the Avalanche are a well-oiled machine. I mean, this is a team that's lost 2 games in regulation in 34 games. So again, you're not pinning your hopes on saying, oh, well, the Jets played fairly well against the best team, now they should be able to steamroll other teams. Well, it doesn't work that way. Their blemishes and their deficiencies were involved in this game, Sean. I mean, there weren't enough quality scoring chances, to the point where Scott O'Neill stapled Cole Perfetti to the bench after the game and didn't want to talk about it in the moment. So I'll be curious to say if he has anything more of an expanded answer. But all he said to my colleague Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press when he asked about Perfetti only having the 9 seconds after he came out of the bench for the tripping minor was that it was a coach's decision. And, that was one of those, Sean, where what he didn't say was maybe more meaningful than what he did say in that situation, because, probably didn't. We know that Marty Necas is a faster skater than Perfetti. It's not a surprise that he got beat up the ice by Perfetti, even though they started at a even distance, equidistant. Actually, you have to give credit to Perfetti for being above the puck in that situation, but he got beat up the ice by a faster skater. And then I didn't particularly think it was much of a penalty on Perfetti. I thought it was a little bit more, maybe Makar lost his balance, but it sure looked like he kind of embellished a little bit. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is that Perfetti had a tough go tonight, and we haven't seen Scott O'Neill, we've seen Perfetti's ice time diminish, Sean, but it was under 9 minutes tonight. 8:54, I think I got him on the sheet here, with only 13. Perfetti had 11 shifts for 8:37 of ice time on the ice for each of the first 2 goals. And we've been talking about Cole. He'd been sort of trending a little bit in the upper direction with 3 assists in his previous 4 games going into St. Louis. But, being benched a game and a half later was probably not how he envisioned trying to build on what he had been doing. So that's a big issue for the Jets. They got to find a way to get Cole going. And Sean, there's no easy answer given the scenario with his ankle and how it's impeding his skating. So anyways, it's just something that, we'll dig in more later, but that's sort of where I'm at. But this was another game, Sean, where not enough at 5-on-5 and too many guys not generating enough. And again, this isn't one player. It's not about saying, oh, well, hey, look, Arniel bench Perfetti. Well, he can't bench 6 forwards at one time. And right now the Jets basically are a 2-line hockey team at best for most of their games. And that's not good enough. That's not going to be good enough to compete against the best team in the NHL, like the Avalanche. And it's not going to be good enough to compete against, fellow teams below the playoff line, like the Utah Mammoth.
One of the tricky parts about what we're seeing here, I would think, is, and we've talked about this before, I think you're starting to see the hockey world come around to it. And, the idea that we had early on this show, some earlier than others can, that the Winnipeg Jets roster is not, capable of playing the style of play that they're trying to execute. And one of the things that I think is a little bit tough about Cole Perfetti is, he was so good last year, and we haven't necessarily seen that. And I'm going to be honest with you, I am not I am not a keen enough eye for hockey to decipher between how much of his issues exist because of, a lack of effort or doing the right things, or maybe he's not right where he's supposed to be in the system, or all those kind of things. And the idea that he was a player that just was able to, operate under the kind of giant umbrella that was Nikolai Ehlers, that opened things up for him and like increased his confidence and allowed him to do the things that he did last year. It's another way of saying, like, when I see Cole Perfetti getting benched, I wonder how much of it is like how much you're benching the guy because the roster's not capable this year, and it's exposing some people because of that, right? Like there's, Cole Perfetti is who Cole Perfetti is. And if what Cole Perfetti needs is another player on that line to be the driver, if he's not a driver and he's a play off the driver kind of guy, he showed that he was pretty darn good at it last year. They haven't found a driver outside of that top line for Cole Perfetti to play off of. And it makes me wonder about, the idea of what we saw. Okay, I'm going to just transition from that quickly into a guy like Gustav Nyquist, who makes a gorgeous pass to Mark Scheifele. And all of a sudden you see, okay, those are the things that made, Nyquist a player that was coveted last year by the, Minnesota Wild, and had a great year before that with the Nashville Predators. And you start to wonder, with the idea of people talking about breaking up lines and creating different drivers, the Winnipeg Jets, regardless of what we say here, the three biggest offensive drivers that they have all typically been on the top line. They've tried the idea of putting Gabe Velarde on different lines. And I know I'm not going into a place other people have. I know people have been screaming for this over and over and over again, but I think that this is kind of a reverse engineered look at this, in that Gus Nyquist, I thought, looked pretty good on this night. He was one of the Jets that popped most on this night, and that should make a little bit of sense because now he's playing around crafty skill players, which is what he spent a good chunk of his career being, is a crafty, skilled player. And so when I see that and be like, okay, there's some flashes of what he could be if you've got him with certain, playing off of a really, like I say, I always think of drivers as the Mark Scheifele's of the world. You're driving a boat and then there's a nice calm wake that you can either surf on or like get in behind. And I thought that gave us Gus Nyquist's best game of the year so far here tonight. And I know that the Jets aren't going to necessarily break that up. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, they've shown in the past that they typically aren't going to. I don't know how much worse things could get before you tried that. I mean, hey, wake up, look behind you, objects in the mirror closer than they appear. Yeah. Is that the Vancouver Canucks who are 1 point behind the Winnipeg Jets with even games right now? Like, how much worse can it get before you try these different things? But I would say this, I find myself more and more, Ken, having empathy with the situation that the Winnipeg Jets find themselves in, or maybe some players find themselves in, because Cole Perfetti is probably just not ready to be a driver in the NHL, and maybe will never be a driver in the NHL, but played really well off of a driver when he was given an opportunity, and doesn't have one on his line. And he plays on the second line of the Winnipeg Jets. That should say something about the team that the Winnipeg Jets put together this season. And so I just kind of wanted to make that connection between Cole Perfetti and Gus Nyquist, because are they doing everything they could possibly do? No. But with frustration goes bad decisions, bad choices. Sometimes you check out because if frustration forces you down. I'm not saying it's okay that those players do that, but I am saying I understand that those players are challenged right now, and that may not be leading to their best version of themselves. But how many players on this roster, Ken, are not able to achieve the best version of themselves because the Winnipeg Jets have 3 drivers in their 12 forwards, and they're all on the same line, and everyone else is just trying to figure it out and try and get it done on their own when they're being given a task that may just be above their pay grade, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's tough to answer because we've talked about this before. Morgan Barron is going. We know that he's up to 6 goals. Beautiful effort today. He's been disruptive on the forecheck. He's using his speed. He's using his body, and all of those things. But you can't win with being a two. Even with a 2-line hockey team, it's very hard to win. Even with elite goaltending from Connor Hellebuck and elite play from Josh Morrissey on the back end. So I'm curious. I mean, we'll dig into this a little bit more, but let's. Cole Perfetti definitely got the pristine roofing wake up call this evening from Scott O'Neill, and we'll see how he responds on Sunday against the Utah Mammoth. Because Sean, I was there when he was healthy scratched, for that game a couple years ago. Then came back the next day against Buffalo and said it was one of the most embarrassing things he'd ever had to go through as a player. And then he had a bunch more after that. That was tough down the stretch for him. But anyways, he got the pristine roofing wake up call with a third period benching essentially. Now it's up to him to respond.
Well, that means, of course, it's time to give North End Rick the pristine roofing wake up call at 204-981-6289. He is the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your home the pristine roofing wake up call. You will be glad that you did. I also wanted, Ken, I think I'm ready to hand out a Flame Comfort Award here. There's a couple things here. First of all, give me this. Okay, the Jets are the worst team in the league since November 1st. Can we just admit that the Jets don't have it this year? Time to start planning and developing for next season, says Stephen Balter. O'Cranley says a winnable game for the Jets. Not even sure the Avs gave their top effort. Maybe they knew they didn't have to. Right here, Frosty, Winnipeg says, in the first, the Avs looked like they had flubber in their uniforms. That's a callback to the 90s movies there. Not only were they skating past Jets D-men, but they were flying overhead as well. It's a good one, the comment about that hit by Neil Pionk. But this is the one that stands out to me. Cranley saying a winnable game for the Jets. Not even sure the Avs gave their top effort. Maybe they knew they didn't have to. This, to your point of the goal that Morgan Barron scores, way too easy. Flipping a puck. If you go back and look at this play, there's a great camera angle of it. If Cale Makar notices that Morgan Barron is getting flying past him, and he decides to stay and try and hold the line, which makes no sense at all because this is just one of those plays where you give up the line all day. I gotta say what I saw in this game, and you can say all you want, and this is one of the reasons why victories are better than moral victories. But you look at that game against the Washington Capitals, in which I warned, I don't think that was the best version of the Washington Capitals out there. When Ethan Frank's your best player, it probably means that they're a little bit off. So there's maybe a little bit of fool's gold in that first game. If I was the team or if I was someone who was sitting here saying, okay, that's a really good example of the best team in the league, just barely held on against the Winnipeg Jets. I saw a Colorado Avalanche team that came out and skated circles around the Winnipeg Jets to start that game. I saw a Colorado Avalanche team that realized that they didn't need to be at their best in this game and entirely let their level of play slip in that game. I just think like that is giving away an easy opportunity. What they did in there, that they looked, I had said Cale Makar looked almost bored and was thinking, let's spice this game up or something like that. And then when it came down to it, now maybe I would think differently about this if it wasn't for the last 10 minutes of the game where the Colorado Avalanche just got the puck and played keep away for wide swaths of that last 10 minutes. I saw a Colorado Avalanche team that has put the pedal to the metal for quite a lot of this year. And we talked about it last year with the Winnipeg Jets at times when you are the top dog and you keep going and going. And the only way you stay where you are is winning night in and night out and night in and night out. You have to find a way to find effort. So to find that effort, what you do every once in a while is you take the rest where you can get it. I got to say, Ken, I don't look at this as the Winnipeg Jets raising their game to a level where they got close to the best team in the league. I saw the best team establish a blueprint right off the bat, realize they didn't need to be at that blueprint to walk away with this game. And then I thought, to be honest, for a 3-2 game, it was a fairly casual 3-2 game. If you're looking at this from the perspective of the Colorado Avalanche, which is why I'm handing out the Flame and Comfort award to O. Cranley for the Flame and Comfort hot take of the game. And that's, of course, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth-related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James. Get on down there where you will see it is one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside. Folks, visit Flame and Comfort. They will take care of it for you. Ken, the fact that the Winnipeg Jets did get things going, though, on special teams, take away what you think that they can build from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's important on both fronts. I mean, we've talked about this. The penalty kill has been better of late, especially since Hellebuyck has been back. I mean, that's not coincidental, but, the only goal that the Jets have given up on the power play was the 2-man advantage, one-time clapper from Jacob Chychrun. So outside of that, they've been getting a lot accomplished. There's a lot of block shots. There's a lot of, better reads, guys getting into lanes. Sort of being a little bit more sync, one move following the other in terms of your pressure points along the defensive zone. So that was obviously important. And in terms of the power play, Sean, they needed it to get going. And again, no one's blaming Cole Perfetti for the top power play struggling, but I've talked about this a little bit too, maybe not on the air as much. And again, people are going to connect their own dots, but I like the fact that they tried Nyquist there, Sean. I mean, Sean, when Nyquist was at his best, he was a power play demon with the Nashville Predators, and he got squeezed out of the top power play unit there when they brought in Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. So, he's a guy that, in space has shown the ability to show some creativity and make some plays. So when you're playing with guys with, a little bit better, not a little bit, better finishing ability, like Kyle Connor, like Mark Scheifele, like Gabe Vilardi, there's a chance to get some things going. And, Gustav Nyquist is a very much a confidence player. When his confidence is high, he can make things look incredibly easy. He can dart in and out of areas. He can find a way to make a backdoor pass, seam pass to somebody. He gets to the areas where goals are often scored by or from, sorry. So yeah, I mean, I like that idea. I mean, roll with it for a while, see what happens. But the Jets power play has got to be better, Sean. It's kind of, I think going into the game, they were 13th maybe and tied for 19th on the penalty kill. And again, this is a penalty kill that was top 5 for a good chunk of the first quarter of the year. And then they dipped kind of rather precipitously. And we're into the low 20s for a while. So middle of the pack. Needs to be better, starting to get better. They've already got, I think, 5 shorthanded goals already, 2 for Barron, 2 for Kyle Connor, and 1 other one, I think. For sure 4, but they might have a 5th. I mean, special teams got to be better, and there aren't going to be many nights probably when you outscore the league leading team 2-0 on special teams. But just sort of reinforcing your point, Sean. I mean, Nathan McKinnon had 1 shot on goal, 1 attempt in the game. I mean, this is a guy that's. I mean, Connor McDavid has made a push with his absurd recent stretch, but McDavid is, the Art Ross Trophy leader and has been by a pretty substantial margin for a good chunk of this season. Yes, we noticed the rhinoceros on skates, the Jeff Merrick special. A couple times, but not as much in the second half of the game. And again, I don't think it was a lack of interest, but he wasn't being pushed. So, and same with Makar. That was not a Cale Makar, specialty by any stretch here. So yeah, I mean, special teams were an improvement definitely for the Jets, and it's something that they've got to continue to be good at because, Sean, we talked about it earlier in the year when they were 9-3. Special teams were rolling. Both units were in the top 5, and with elite goaltending from Connor Hellebuyck was part of the reason they jumped out to a great start.
I want to go kind of outside of this game because I think that's where a lot of the conversations are going.
Sure.
And were reports of Jets' interest potentially in Mason Marchment. Let's kind of go into that a little bit, but I want to approach it from this angle because I honestly got to say, Ken, I'm going to bring up here on my computer the NHL standings at this stage. which are just, I mean, kind of blow me away at this stage. Like I'd said, I was very surprised to see the
Yeah.
Vancouver even games with the Winnipeg Jets, just 1 point now behind the Winnipeg Jets. Their season has been considered a disaster. The Calgary Flames,
Right.
who are tied in points with the Winnipeg Jets, but have played one more game than the Winnipeg Jets. Everyone has talked about them as being, this is unbelievably bad. The Seattle Kraken, it is, like the war
9 of
sirens
10.
are going off and everyone is running in every single different direction. The St. Louis Blues, 2 points up on the Winnipeg Jets now. And we just came from talking with Monty about how everything there is like nothing good is happening there. The only team I would think that is kind of around, I would even think the Utah Mammoth, who are right now 5 points up on the Winnipeg Jets, aren't happy with how things are going for themselves. The only teams that would be around the Winnipeg Jets who would be happy the way things are going would be the Chicago Blackhawks, who are tied in points in games with the Winnipeg Jets, and they've fallen off since they've lost their superstar. You got to think there's a point or two there. If Connor Hellebuck is worth that, you got to think Connor Bedard, the way he's playing, is worth that. The San Jose Sharks would be another team that would be looking at this and thinking, and why? Because those are two basically last place cellar dwelling teams that are starting to make a little bit of a turn. I find the outlook that the Winnipeg Jets are taking fascinating right now, in the idea that everyone around them is thinking, could it get any worse? And the Winnipeg Jets, were out poking around saying, get Mason Marchment. We're going to turn this whole thing around. And I wonder what your thoughts are on the mindset of the Winnipeg Jets and this rosy outlook that they have. Do they see something that nobody else sees, or do they have their heads buried in the sand?
Sean, in this case, it reminds me of what we were talking about with Kiefer Sherwood. And obviously, Sherwood's had a much better start than Mason Marchment. This reminds me, and Sean, we've talked about this on the show a lot. When the Jets identify a guy that they like, they try to bring him in no matter when and no matter what. This similar to Brendan Dillon. They didn't get him when the Sharks traded him to the Washington Capitals. But, a year and a bit later, when the Capitals were in cap hell, they found a way to get Brendan Dillon. We know that the Jets have been interested in Mason Marchment dating back to his time with the Florida Panthers. We think they were interested when he signed his 4-year or 5-year deal with the Dallas Stars. And we think the Jets were probably interested this summer when the Stars put him on the market and eventually moved him to Seattle. But so to me, this only makes sense if they think they're interested in trying to extend him. For me, Sean, that's what I see. I don't think this was just a rental situation for Marchment trying to, improve from 28th to 22nd or whatever. If they were going to get Marchment, and again, I think there was interest there. But for folks saying, "Oh, why didn't the Jets?" Someone said it's an overpay, but Mike, we know he got traded to the Blue Jackets. That's why we're talking about it.
Figure it out, Mike.
Maybe you should do your research. Thank you.
Okay, here we go.
Anyway,
thanks, Mike. Thanks for keeping us honest. Go on.
Anyways, the Jets are interested, but for people saying something to say it's an overpay, well, the Jets didn't even have a second and a fourth this year to give in the deal, even if they wanted to go for an overpay, if that's what some want to consider it. But to me, it makes sense for the Jets to be interested in the player. He's obviously not performing at the same level with the Seattle Kraken as he did with the Dallas Stars. He's a guy that is a pest to play against. He could bring an element, not a burner, but could bring an element of speed and physicality to the middle six, guy that could play in the second line or the third line. I think a guy that could mesh either with Adam Lowry or, higher in the lineup or wherever you wanted to use him. I think there you could find a way to make him be useful, but it only makes sense if you can extend him. It doesn't make sense to bring him in as a rental for a second and a fourth and then sort of roll the dice and take your chances. But, I think their interest in him makes sense. Now, some other folks have been talking about Philip Danault, who you're going to see. I don't think he's able to play. I don't think on Saturday night, but he's just been reacquired by Montreal. And for people wondering, oh well, the Jets need a center. Why didn't they get Phil Danault? Well, he's got a modified no trade, so he has complete control of the situation. And Montreal was one of the only places he was interested in considering going back to.
And
So
only, I think, 5 points in 30
right, he
some.
doesn't have a goal. So for all the
So
people
he's not
saying,
solving
again,
your,
I like the player a lot, but he makes more sense for Montreal than for Winnipeg
yeah.
because he'll be their Adam Lowry type of center on a
Yes.
team that doesn't check overly well outside of Nick Suzuki in terms of their forward group. Yes, there's a couple other players, I get it, and Suzuki is elite and would be in this candidacy for the Selke Trophy this year. But he's a guy that makes sense for them. He's familiar with the organization. He's a playoff performer. He's a guy that you can match up against the other team's best. He makes more sense for Montreal than he does for Winnipeg. And again, the Jets don't have a second round pick either this year or next year. So to your original point, Sean, and we've talked about this, and some people want to throw up the white flag, which is not going to happen. But at a time when the Jets don't have a second or a fourth, they can't give up their first this year because that first round pick could be a top 5 to 10 lottery pick if they don't start posting actual victories compared to moral victories. So to me, that pick is not on the table. Certainly not for a rental player, and certainly not unless the Jets go on a 5, 6, 7 game winning streak. And even then, I mean, you got to be very careful, and there would have to be top 5 or top 10 protection, all of those sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, to your point, we've been talking about shuffling around deck chairs, and I mean that's sort of where it's at for now. The roster freeze is in session, so people hoping that there's going to be someone called up from the Moose. Jets won't be calling up anyone from the Moose. There's the holiday roster freeze is in effect, and we'll see what happens kind of coming out of the roster freeze. But yeah, I mean they're in an interesting spot, Sean, for sure, and there's not a lot of easy answers. It's not as simple as snapping your finger and saying, well, Brad Lambert comes up, they're going to solve the middle 6 scoring problem. Because Brad's, quite frankly, not dominating at the AHL level. And people can say, oh, that's because there's not as much talent. Well, that worked last year, but it's not going to work this year because the Moose have actually played a lot better. So, like I said, the easiest way for Brad to either get himself a recall or get himself a trade is to work his behind off or work his tail off and try to produce as much offense as he can while playing within their system on a winning team.
I'm going to tell you what I think has the Winnipeg Jets in a dilly of a pickle, and I've talked about it here before. But things can be both your strength and your weakness. And one of the strengths for the Winnipeg Jets has been re-signing their guys over and over again. Adam Lowry, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Alex Iafallo, Nemesnikov, Niederreiter, like over and over again. They get the guys to stay here, right? And they do it because they're a family, right? And that's how they handle this. And that really worked last year. The problem with the idea of a family is you do not give up on family. And that's what the Winnipeg Jets are doing right now. And that sounds like a good and a noble and an honorable thing. But the fact of the matter is, in a real family, if you're, your kid or your sibling or parent or uncle or whatever is struggling, you don't give up on family. And that's the way the Winnipeg Jets are conducting themselves. But it's not a family, it's a business. And the thing that got all those guys re-signed was the Winnipeg Jets took a look at these players and told them, we are going to compete for a Stanley Cup every single year. That hamstrings you. I'm telling you right now, it hamstrings you because sometimes, and you can see it with the Colorado Avalanche. If the Colorado Avalanche keep going, you know what I mean? Keep going, and they go on to win a cup this year. Well, it's going to be 2022 to 2026 when they had some years where they stepped back and they had to lose some players and things got a little bit tough. But in stepping back, and making hard decisions, moving on from their core, and not just giving Mikko Rantanen what he wanted and finding a way to juggle and move things around and fill different spots. They've changed their mix, something that the Winnipeg Jets have never done before. And I'm not saying that the Colorado Avalanche are the be-all and the end-all example. But what I am saying is the Winnipeg Jets have put themselves in a situation where they've told an aged core. Mark Scheifele is 33 or turning 33. So is Adam Lowry. So is Connor Hellebuck. that they're going to compete every single year. And that's why these guys stayed here. And I don't think that's a promise that should be made to players. And I would hope at this stage that those players would understand that promise may need to be tweaked, because here's the deal. If the Winnipeg Jets keep going on the trajectory that they're on, and I've seen nothing, and I said that early on, I said, how long ago, Ken? Almost 20, probably 20 games or more ago. I do not think the Winnipeg Jets can play the style of hockey they're trying to play. All these games later, they're still trying to do it. And the outcome looks like I said before, when people were saying they're up, they're down. No, they're not. This is as consistent a team as you've seen in the NHL this year. It's just the degree of difficulty was low in their schedule at the beginning of the year. They won some games, and now as other teams have sped up and got into their season, it's not going very well. So if the Winnipeg Jets keep going on this track, they're going to put themselves in a situation where they're going to be out of the playoffs. They're going to be a fairly high draft pick. And based on where they get that draft pick, maybe that draft pick starts affecting you 2 years from now or something like that. The Winnipeg Jets, in my opinion, if they are going to take a run at this and try and bring back Josh Morrissey, which they will, because he's, one of the best defensemen in the league. And if they're not going to try and trade some of their core to tweak things, they're going to need to find a way to build around this core. And they're going to need to do it with the draft. They're going to need to do it with trades. They're going to need to do it but if they're going to do this, it's probably going to require a step back before it takes a step forward. And if you're in a position where you've made a promise to the core on your team that you are going to compete every single year, that is a promise, in my opinion, that should not be made. Now, maybe they made it and it got them what they wanted. It got them all those players re-signed, and there's a debate to be had whether, hey, Ken, you and I said it. The Adam Lowry deal made all this sense. All these deals made sense. The only thing that doesn't make sense is they've locked down a core that has proven very little when it matters most. So unless the Winnipeg Jets are going to try and jostle, and if they miss the playoffs this year, they should try to jostle their core. They should try to spark things and wake things up. But it probably is going to take this year and next year step back to try and take a run at this when Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and Adam Lowry are 34, turning 35, and go for a last-ditch effort at trying to get a Stanley Cup through the window that is left with those players. It's just so hard to do it, because right now, if you're going to do what you promised your players, you're going to compete every year. It is why, Ken, you get this talk out of a team that is surrounded by teams that are telling you the sky is falling, because it is. And the Winnipeg Jets are like, we're one move away, we're one tweak away, we're one shift away from being first place in this league again, guys. It is delusional what they're looking at this stage. They need to kind of fit their reality. If they are going to try and just say and keep that promise and say we are going to compete again this year, it is going to take them draining what little future assets they have to do it. And the question becomes, why would you do that? Why would you do that for a team that has shown you, and a core that has shown you for all these years, that the best they've had in them in the last number of years is a second round trip that you made off the hands of the hockey gods, if everyone's being honest. And I just think that this is the fascinating question going forward. All these games look the same. They'll be up, they'll be down. They've been down far more than they've been up. But the issue at heart here now is the tack that the Winnipeg Jets are going to take going forward. And if they're digging around trying to find the Mason Marchments, and they're going in there saying, we're going to add a guy here, add a guy there, I think you end up being a team that is like, you want to know how you get in the mushy middle? That strategy is how you lock yourself into the mushy middle for a long, long time.
Yeah, no, totally fair. And it's so interesting, right? So there's no guarantee, again, for all of the tankathon folks, and you can understand why some of the people feel that way. And hey, you're looking around the league, seeing Macklin Celebrini, you're seeing Connor Bedard, you're seeing teams that had multiple first-round draft picks in the top 5 or in the top 6 or whatever else. You can bring Sam Dickinson into the mix here, Sean. But we also went into those buildings a lot in the last 3 years, and places that are usually vibrating and shaking and have some of the best atmosphere around, they were libraries for almost 3 full seasons. So Jets can't afford to be doing that now. But the other part of the equation, and I get it, Sean, maybe the best way to extend that window is to have a top 3 pick arrive. And the only way that can happen, but here's the problem. If you don't get that top 3 pick or don't get the top 2 pick, you know, if you get the 10th pick and you miss the playoffs, now you miss the playoff gates and you got a player, to your point, if you're not getting a top 3 pick that can immediately jump into the lineup and maybe fill that second line center job, or, you know, if it ends up being, you know, one of the defensemen, you know, specifically at UND, you know, can he jump in the way Matthew Schaefer has? I mean, like that, those are questions that we won't know. I mean, I'm not saying he's Matthew Schaefer, but what we are saying is that if you're not getting a top 3 pick, then you're probably waiting for 2 years down the road. And to your point about the core group in the, you know, in its almost approaching its mid 30s, you know, they can't really afford to wait for 2 years in order to take another big swing at it. Yes, those guys take care of their bodies. Yes, they may still be elite players, but you got their window. You know, I know it's people hate the window talk, but their best chance is in the next 2 to 3 years, and probably closer to 2 than to 3. But if you get the injection from a top 3 pick, it might help you. But we've seen examples, recent examples, and I don't even mean recent for Buffalo. I mean, if you go back to the McDavid year, Sean, I mean, Buffalo got Eichel, who's a damn good player. They've still haven't made the playoffs since that time. For Arizona, look at it. Arizona's still trying to make the playoffs. Yeah. They got Dylan Strome, who's a really good player, on another team.
I don't necessarily
two teams since that time.
I don't necessarily though agree that with the idea that like good teams seem to be able to dig themselves out of taking that step back, right? Like there's something clearly wrong with the Buffalo Sabres and the fact that Arizona's never been able to turn things. I mean, that's that I don't necessarily put that on sometimes you get lost and you never get back. You know, at some point you have to have confidence. You know, every team, as long as you've been around for more than 5 years, has been a phoenix that has burnt up and risen from the ashes. It's just part of what hockey is. And to take a look at this here, you know, you're talking about the idea of a top pick. The Winnipeg Jets are 2 points out of last place in the NHL, and all the teams surrounding them, all of the teams, sorry, give me 1 second here, because I was doing the
Keaton Verhoff is who I was talking about. Sorry, the UND defenseman who's come over from the Western League there.
So the Winnipeg Jets are 27th in the league, and if I go looking above them, there's only one team that I can find. One team. Things are going terrible for Pittsburgh right now. It's not that bad for Pittsburgh. The only team around them that I can find that has a worse record than them in the last 10 games is the 1-9 in their last 10 games Seattle Kraken. The Winnipeg Jets are 2-6-2. This like where they are, everyone keeps looking at this from this like aviator blue tinted lenses of, okay, they're here, but they're going to go up. They are, the way they're playing, a top first overall pick is very, very achievable the way they're going here. The Winnipeg Jets are at this stage they're far closer to scoring the first overall pick than they are to scoring a spot in the playoffs. And hey, why don't we turn that and say, you know, if they've got a good chance at scoring the first overall pick, you've got an unbelievable chance, the best chance, 100% chance of scoring a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game while you focus on home sweet home. Our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. Now, that's what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. You know that first overall pick could help make the next season of the Jets a lot easier here. But okay, here's the other thing I wanted to say about this. And before I do, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout out?
Right on. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met during the holiday season or otherwise, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
I know Kevin Cheveldayoff talked with Mike McIntyre not that long ago. I think, honestly, you take a look at the standings and where the attitudes and the things that you're hearing from all these different, there's a catharsis in your team being, there's a catharsis in Jim Montgomery being like, no, we're not using injuries as an excuse. Things aren't good enough. We're not doing well. We're getting frustrated. We're falling to those frustrations, blah, blah, blah. There's a catharsis in the truthfulness that comes with people acknowledging where they are in the lineup. And I honestly think, because we're getting into these conversations of how a Winnipeg Jets audience is going to respond to a team that's not doing well. We know that the feeling of the Jets organization is they got to put a winner on the ice if they're going to put people in the stands. I've said this in the past, and I just said it before. Every team goes through cycles. You're going to crash at some point, and then you got to rise again. And you got to, if you don't have an audience that will refuses to show up when the team is not good, then you don't have an NHL audience. And I'll put that challenge out there to Winnipeg Jets fans. If the Winnipeg Jets fall out of the playoffs and it's not good enough for you to go see, Quinn Hughes when the Wild come rolling into town and see really good hockey players do really amazing things, then you're not an NHL audience. That's it. I'm throwing down the gauntlet and putting that out to Winnipeg Jets fans as it is out there right now. But I personally can think the Winnipeg Jets need to talk to their audience differently. I think it's ridiculous at this stage that there's not voices out there from people high up in the organization who are, if anything, saying to fans, yeah, this isn't good enough. We're not doing good enough. We need to be better. Here's the problems as we recognize them, not just simply, oh yeah, there's answers in the room. We're going to turn this around, blah, blah, blah. There needs to be an acknowledgement. And this is the deal. At some point, I'm a big believer in, now I just laid down the gauntlet for Jets fans, but at some point you need to represent your fans. And if you are, like, I'll tell you this, like as a Dallas Cowboys fan, it drives me nuts to see an owner just entirely ignore his fans and do whatever he wants and treat a team like his plaything and continue to sell out the building every single game, because that is the only power you have as fans, is not buying tickets, to let your team know, the management, whoever, that you're not happy with how things are going. And that, to me, is the concern of where the Winnipeg Jets go with this, because Winnipeg Jets fans know what they're seeing. And it's not matching the rhetoric that is coming from the Winnipeg Jets organization. This whole thing of like, we're still, the President's Trophy team, and we're just going through a little bit of a rough patch right now. Rough patches typically don't last 33, 34 games, right? So to me, I think the Winnipeg Jets, either ownership or management, or even if they did it through the coaching staff, need to be a little bit more active in their conversation with the fan base, because right now people are frustrated and people are calling for Kevin Cheveldayoff's head, and people are making frustrated comments about the ownership and how, they're not taking action and all these different kind of things. It would do Kevin Cheveldayoff well to answer questions of, why have you not made a deal yet? Well, are you still in a position where you're going to compete every single year regardless and hold up the promise you made to all these players? There's a lot of questions that fans have as things are spiraling off the railing here. And I just think there's a vacuum of silence from the organization. And I think that's what tunes out fans. I think that's when fans turn and say, you know what? I'm done with this. I can see something wrong here. The organization is pretending there's nothing wrong, and that drives me crazy. I want you to be beating your fists against the wall the way that I'm beating my fists against the wall, and then I'll come to the arena and we can do that together. But right now, the conversation coming out of the Jets organization is not matching what is happening with the team, and the fan base is too smart to not realize that, and I think it's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I know where you're coming from. I mean, the one thing that, like, I'm not going to turn this into a Dallas Cowboys situation, Sean, but their owner talks all the time, and it hasn't changed. How he really is running the football club. So I don't know. I mean, and the other part about Kevin Cheveldayoff, we know he doesn't like the spotlight, and again, that doesn't mean he shouldn't speak more. I mean, I think a lot of people would enjoy him speaking more.
GM,
I agree with you.
GM, he's the leader of the guy who puts the team together. He may not like to, but that comes with the job. Like
Totally.
Ken,
I'm
I
just
don't
saying,
get to
like,
just say, I don't
fans
feel
want
like
to know
talking
what.
today and take it over.
I'm not saying he shouldn't talk. I
I'm
think
not saying
he should.
you're saying that.
What I'm saying is that he can't be as transparent as fans want him to be when it comes to if he's making moves or not. That's not the way that he conducts himself, and that's not how you get trades to happen, by speaking them into existence. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. But again, like I said, I mean, Jerry runs his mouth all the time, and again, it's a different situation. I mean, that he's the owner, but he also kind of acts like the GM. So again,
Yeah.
it's an apples to oranges situation. But my point being that talking more doesn't necessarily change the. I think the actions are also what fans want to know. And right now, the Jets haven't taken any actions to make their team better, and I think that's what has a lot of them frustrated.
My point is Jerry Jones talks the way that he does because there's no consequences to that. He gets to run
Right,
his team like
his
a
team.
plaything, and the people keep filling the building. And that's the issue. No one
Right.
ever votes with their wallets when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. So he gets to go on and do whatever the heck he wants to do because he makes money regardless. I can put out a bad team. I can tell you I'm going to do whatever I want. I can fire a coach of in the middle of a run of winning Super Bowls, and I'll get away with it because you chumps keep buying tickets, right? That's the whole point of what I'm saying. It's definitely an apples to apples thing. The Dallas Cowboys or apples to oranges thing. The Dallas Cowboys are an entity to themselves. But I
Yep.
mean, I thought, how long ago, Ken, was it that Tree in Toronto jumped up in front of the mics when things weren't going good in Toronto? Like, that seems like it was ages ago that this happened, right?
It wasn't that long ago.
Well,
I
how
don't think.
long was it?
Couple weeks. I mean, now they want Berube fired. It's people yelling from the corner, whatever.
Well, I don't know
I
if
don't want
you've
to turn
been
this
reading
into a
our
Leaf
chat room,
talk
but
here.
anyways, yeah. I will say this. You get all kinds of when you're reading into the chat room, you get all kinds of different points and takes from all over the place, just like Myers Jugs will have you covered from all over the place because, as we've told you, they deliver anywhere in the city. So give them a call if you have any pharmaceutical needs, any health food needs, any supplemental needs, and they will take care of you. Ken, let's get to the Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I think it was in a first period power play or penalty kill for the Jets. It was during the Avs power play. Dylan Sandberg made a really nice block on a scoring chance. I've lost the name of who it was, but to me, that was one of those things that sort of stood out to me. Smart read, got himself in the lane, and made the block. Thought I sent you the name. Maybe I didn't.
I didn't catch the player. I thought it was just number 4, but there isn't just a number 4. But on one of the penalty kills for the Jets, the one before they actually get the goal from the breakaway, the Colorado Avalanche, and this is why I'm saying the Colorado Avalanche got way too casual.
Right.
The exact same thing they did on the Morgan Barron goal and sprung a player behind the defenseman and passed the puck. And the last defenseman picked the puck out of the air and stopped the breakaway.
Oh, it's Devon Taves.
There you go.
Taves. And sorry, it was Brock Nelson whose shot that Sandberg blocked. Sorry,
there you go. But Devon Taves picks that puck out of the air.
Yeah, IFL's pass, and Barron was gone otherwise.
Yeah, twice. I mean, they got away with it once, and they just kept doing it, which I thought was ridiculous. I'm sure they'll be seeing it in the film room tomorrow, regardless. I thought that was a perfect example, even if it's on the other team of the Johnson Group. Kenny and Renny OG's got you covered. Play of the game. And hey, do you run small businesses in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that brings us to our hashtag, the keg save of the game. What you got, Ken?
Yeah, a couple good ones for sure. There was one on McKinnon. There was one on Nelson. I don't know. I'm kind of torn between the two. I'm going to go with the one on Brock Nelson during the one timer that you and I talked about. That was on Nelson.
Yeah. Okay. Good enough for me. I'll go with that one. Well, I mean, we'll both go with it because Ken and I sometimes we're allowed to agree. We try to every once in a while. But that is our hashtag the keg save of the game, brought to you by the fine folks at the keg. It doesn't matter though what we think, matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You are automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate, usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations there in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last, and that brings us
Sorry,
to
Archery
what?
Lekkonen, it was not Nelson.
There you go.
Yeah, you
Okay.
had it.
All right. Anyway, Terry Trey, you are the winner of the hashtag save of the game from our last show. All you have to do is send me your full name, send me your email. I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate, usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations there in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. Ken, anything to say before we wrap this up here?
Just quickly, I mean, again, we don't have to talk about fighting often, but what'd you think of Tanner Pearson stepping up after it was a big hit? I thought it was a clean hit by Manson on Cole Perfetti, but I mean, Scott O'Neill certainly liked the stepping up, and Pearson said he didn't like a big guy going after a smaller guy, but I mean, Josh Manson, pretty honest player. We talked about him a lot. I have no problem at all with the hit, and also I have no problem, obviously, with Tanner Pearson, feeling like he needed to step up in that situation. And for those who maybe have forgotten, when the LA Kings and Anaheim Ducks went at it often, I'm guessing that there may have been other history in the brain there as well.
Yeah, I've got no problems with any of it, right? Like, you're sending a message. Like I said, I've got no problem with Josh Manson said. I've got no problem with Pearson doing it. Would like to have seen them get up and continue fighting. I think Pearson's probably grateful that it ended up the way that it did there. It seemed to calm things down for the rest of the game at that stage. I don't know. I've got no problem with Pearson doing it. I don't necessarily think it was overly necessary. Like, you could apply the same logic. Well, I didn't like a big guy going after a small guy. You could apply the same logic on the Natchez hip check, which was a great hit by Neil Pionk. Could be like, well, I didn't like the way he threw that hit at one of our star guys. You know what I mean? And then it turns into those kind of things. It makes more sense for the Jets to do it because at that point, the Jets are trying to spark something for themselves. Yeah, team that no doubt needs a spark, and we'll be looking for one going on. Maybe, just maybe, Utah team that cannot seem to figure things out is exactly what the doctor ordered for the Winnipeg Jets, but that's what we were thinking about the St. Louis Blues. Anyways, that is the next time you will see us. But before you do go, if you appreciate the conversation happening in this space, we would implore you to appreciate the sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Jim Pattison Toyota on Region, Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, Myers Drugs, the Johnston Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs, and of course, the fine folks at the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We will reconvene and do this after that game, the last game before Christmas in Utah. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.